let's talk bronzer and contour for brown skinned people. So I feel like this is something that people never really talk about as far as for deeper skin tones. For lighter skin tones, people are always like, you want a gray tone or for your contour, and you want some sort of warmth to bring back life to your face, right? That's the difference between contour and bronzer. But for deeper skin tones, we don't always keep in account that brown is made out of all of the primary colors. And so, because of that, you're going to see some warmth in pretty much every contour, otherwise, it's gonna look a little bit insane. It's gonna look weird to contour with something that's a straight gray color on a darker skin tone. Let me explain. For those of you color theory junkies out there, we know that a neutral colored brown is made from 1 part blue, 2 parts red, 3 parts yellow. That's just the formula to making a neutral brown color. Now, the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, make up every color imaginable. So the fact that you can combine these to create the colors we want is a huge deal, right? The more cool tone we want it, the more blue we're gonna add. The warmer tone that we want it, the more red tone we will add. The brighter we want something, the more yellow we add. I like to tell people, so I'm a cosmetologist, and when I talk about color theory, I like to tell people that your blue tones are gonna add deepness. They're gonna make the color look dark. Your red tones are going to add a richness of color. They're going to make that color just seem more full. Your yellow toned colors, though, are going to add brightness and reflect to anything. So when we talk about red, yellow, and blue making up brown, 1 part blue, 2 parts red, 3 parts yellow. Okay, so I put a little bit of each of these colors on my little tin, and I'm going to go ahead and mix them all together. I'm going to try to mix them fairly evenly, but ignore the nasty scraping sound that I'm making when I mix this. Okay? Okay, so this is our red, yellow, and blue. All mixed together. If we wanted to shift this to more of a contour shade, we would have to add, and I'm gonna put this on the side with the spout, we would have to add some black to that because this one is a neutral. Let me just swatch what a neutral is going to look like on the back of my hand. Oop. Need to pick up a little bit more than that. Okay, so neutral. Okay, it's not really leaning warm. It's not really leaning cool either. We see both colors. Like, I can tell that there's some yellow in there, but I can also tell there's some red. However, if we want to make a neutral color lean more towards a contour, adding just a touch of black will do that. And I'm going to be really careful how much I add. I'm just going to use what's ever left on my spatula to kind of mix that in, because this can go bad real fast. So now let's take a look at this. This is more of a contour shade, but it's still brown. It's just a cooler brown. So I already swatched the neutral. I'm gonna go ahead and swatch what we just made so I can show you, okay? The difference between the two. Like, if I were to contour with this, that might look a little crazy, and I can show you. Like, if this is still a brown color, right? Let me just add just a little bit to the back of my cheeks, or to my cheeks, not the back of my cheeks. We're gonna just tap this out really quick. All of a sudden, it just looks like I have something smudged on my face. And that was me using this cooler toned color. I tend to be very firmly in the camp of, you want something neutral leaning cool for deeper skin tones. There's not necessarily a right or wrong answer to this, but if I mixed a little bit of my neutral and a little bit of my cool, like my cool with black, that would be my ideal sweet spot for a contour. I just mixed it in between. But let me show you what they look like mixed together. So we've got our cooler gray tone that looks muddy. We've got our neutral. Let's right up here swatch this one. Do you see how that's still a cool color, but it's not really leaning towards gray? Gray looks a little bit crazy, and you may disagree with me, you may think I'm complete bonkers, but I have just found that when it comes to bronzer and contour, this looks crazy, this looks more like a bronzer, this is actually what looks more like a contour. Now, this is what they say our contour should look like, but this is what a good contour looks like on brown skin. You don't want something that looks like that because then you're going to end up with a splotchy face. I am specifically speaking to medium tan skin tones, and I'm also talking towards the fact that my skin is more neutral. For a contour on like warmer skin, you're probably going to lean a little bit more neutral for your contour and then pretty orange for your bronzer, versus cooler tone skin, you may be able to get away with something like this and then something a little bit more like this for your bronzer. It really depends on your skin tone. I land very solidly in the neutral category, and in fact, I definitely find this happens a lot with just foundations in general. People tend to think that if you're brown, you're orange, and I don't understand that completely. I am brown. That doesn't mean that I'm always warm. And I find that a lot of medium skin tone, their foundation is straight orange, and I cannot understand that because I am not orange. I'm not an Oompa Loompa here. Don't try to make me into one. Let me swatch a few bronzers so you can tell the difference. All right, I'm going to start with some warm ones. Starting with this Gucci bronzer. This is not my favorite, partially because this is so warm and it looks warm on me. So let's go ahead and swatch it. I'm going to swatch a few warm ones together. Even on my finger, that swatch is warm, okay? So let's use this part of my arm. Orange, right? Let's get a little bit more so it's easier to see. All right, so first we have orange. The Gucci bronzer that I have is orange, right? Then let's look at the Juvia's Place. Not all contours and bronzers lean this orange, okay? So then I have these. These are both, again, in the warm category. We have this one that's more orange, this one that's a little bit more reddish. Both warm. So we're gonna swatch this one. That's pretty orange. That's like, this is kind of like the color of clay when it dries. Okay, so our Gucci, this is the Juvia's Place, right? Both super orange. This one is a little bit more on the red, but this one looks orange comparatively. This one always gets me, and the reason that I don't ever use it is because it's way too warm for me. So we have the Too Faced Chocolate Soleil and that one. Let's swatch a little bit. Like again, very orange. Looking at this, Gucci, Juvia's Place. This one's even more orange. Let's get a little bit more so you can see. That one's even more orange than all of the ones leading up to it. Typically, these are going to be decent bronzers for those that have warm skin tones, at least in terms of if you're brown. First, we have our orange bronzers. Let's move into our more neutral category. This one is going to surprise you because it surprised me. Like when I swatched this, I did not expect to like it. We have Pick It Up by Give Beauty. This one looks kind of orange, and I think it's because it's sitting next to a true brown contour shade, but when I swatch this one, you'll notice, oh look, it's not as orange as it looks in the pan. Now, let's look at, we've got our Gucci, our Juvia's Place, and our Too Faced, okay? Right on top of that. Do you see how that looks straight up brown comparatively to the rest of these? Okay, so another more neutral toned bronzer. That Give one is one, and I didn't swatch the contour, I swatched the bronzer shade. Let me swatch another one. All right, we're gonna do this Infallible, the L'Oreal Infallible one, because that one is a little bit more on the neutral side as well. It's just a little bit darker so you can see it. Okay, so again, this one does lean a little bit more red. It's starting to lean a little bit more towards the cool side. Still a bronzer, right? And these neutral ones are going to be way better bronzers for those of you that have neutral skin. If you have a neutral tone skin tone and you try to use an orange bronzer, you're going to look like you fake and baked. Like it's not going to be pretty. Let's also do this one. This is the Essence Sun Matte Bronzing Powder. This one is also very much in the neutral range. When I swatch this one, you can see this one is neutral leaning cool. This other one was neutral leaning cool too. But do you see, like, obviously the more neutral ones honestly melt into my skin because I am a neutral tone, and that's generally what I tend to use for bronzer. But we have our warms, the Gucci the Juvia's Place, the Too Faced, but then we have the Give one that's very, very, very much neutral. We have this L'Oreal one, and then this Essence one that basically disappears into my skin. Let's talk cool toned bronzers for a second. Now, your cool toned bronzers are really what you want to aim for a contour. Well, it's what you want to aim for a contour if you are a neutral skin tone. If you're a warmer skin tone, I would actually contour with a more neutral color because that's what's going to be the most flattering on you. I actually think that most of my cool toned bronzers, cool toned contours are cream, unfortunately. So let's dip into that. So first, this one doesn't look like a cool toned contour until you actually swatch it. I'm gonna do my cool tone down here. I don't really have much room with the Essence one up here. So this is the Wet n Wild stick, okay? Do you see how much cooler that looks compared to this one? Like, this one looks downright orange compared to this one. It doesn't look orange compared to these ones, but it looks orange compared to those more neutral ones. Well, this one looks cool toned compared to the neutral ones. Okay, so this one is one that's not very popular for some reason, but this is another cooler toned, like bronzer contour type thing. They're almost identical in shade. But, so, this is the Milani Contour one. So, this is the Gucci, this is Juvia's Place, this is Too Faced. This one is the Give Beauty, and these ones are neutral. So, warm, neutral. So, Give Beauty, L'Oreal, and then the Essence one. And then you come down here and you're like, oh, that is, like, you can tell the difference warm to cool. So this one, this first one was the Wet n Wild. This second one is the Milani. Let me show you one more because I swatched 3 of the other ones. Okay, so this last one is the Cheeks Out by Fenty Beauty. So this one is, if I remember correctly, yeah, this one's considered a bronzer. And this one is deeper than some of the other ones that I showed you. But looking at this swatched with these other ones, okay? Fun fact, I like the Fenty bronzer. I don't love it. Okay. Do you see how even this one, if you look at it and compared to our neutral ones look warm compared to these ones. These ones are obviously the warmest. It's a gradient, so it's like warm, less warm, cool, right? So now that you've seen all of those, we know, yes, different browns are going to look different. I can't tell you, honestly, I have a lot of different favorites. Lately, my favorite has been, so I mentioned that because I'm a neutral skin tone, I tend to bronze with something that's neutral, contour it with something that's cool. Now you can play around with that, but if you're cool toned, I wouldn't bronze with something that's warm. It's gonna make your skin look muddy. You're gonna look a little insane if you do that. Now, there's different gradients, and so, I mean, you can kind of play around with that. This one is one of my favorite contour shades. Because like the other ones that I was showing you, so this is my favorite one, it's got a little bit more gray in it. Now, brown is still brown. Brown, in essence, is typically a warm color. Like, if you're looking at it purely from a color theory standpoint, brown is a warm color, but there are cooler browns and there are warmer browns. I think I talked about this in a matching your foundation video when I was talking about warm versus cool colors. So in general, I think that people often make the mistake with deeper skin tones, with medium or brown skin tones, where they're like, oh, well, orange. Well, I'll tell you what, let me just swatch something for you. So I was telling you guys that I am not orange, okay? So this is the Anastasia Luminous Foundation, okay? Let me just show you. If you're telling me that matches, you're insane. But it's the same thing for the opposite. Like, that doesn't match me, but if someone gave me one that was too red, it would be the same thing. So we do want to make sure that our bronzer falls in the sweet spot for us, for our skin tone. Now, the deeper you go, the more, instead of like an orangey, so the deeper your skin tone is, if you're warm toned, you're going to want to go for a more reddish orange. If you're cooler toned, you're still going to want to do some sort of gray. But honestly, if you're cooler toned, your contour isn't going to make as much of an impact as if you are warmer toned, right? I could talk about this forever and kind of just go round and round in circles. But the fact of the matter is, there's not really one universal color that's going to work for everybody. I have heard so many people talk about how much they love the Gucci bronzer. Well, I'm telling you what, this is very orangey red on me. If you remember, that one is the one that I swatched this with. Let me show you what it looks like when I put it on my skin. Okay? It's not crazy. It's still a beautiful product. But all of a sudden, my face is a little bit orange, which I don't tend to go for that. And if I used something else, that wouldn't be the case. So this is the Gucci one that's a little bit warm. Let me show you what it looks like. Let me show you what it looks like with one that's more on the neutral side, which is what I tend to lean on. Okay? So this L'Oreal Infallible is this one that we swatched, right? It's more in the neutral, almost leaning a little bit red. But if I put this on, you have to be kind of careful with this one. This is pigmented, right? Do you see how this one just melts into the skin and this one kind of stands out? Well, it's because I'm using contrasting colors. Not contrasting colors in terms of like opposite on the color wheel, but a neutral bronzer, because I'm neutral skin tone, is going to blend in a lot easier and to basically disappear into my skin a lot easier than a warm toned one. Okay? So I can tell you until the cows come home my favorite bronzers, but it is going to be different for different skin tones, and I have a lot. So I wasn't going to show you guys this, but for my skin, these are actually some of my favorite contouring products. The first one I already showed you. It's this Give, and honestly, I just discovered this, but holy crap, this is a beautiful contour bronzer duo. Like, this is a great shade for a contour, and I didn't think it would be. All right, I do really love this contour stick by Wet n Wild. The only thing with it is if you're deeper than me, no way that this is going to work. Like, it's just not going to, okay? This last one is the one that I use the most often. It's the Laguna bronzer. Now, this one is labeled as a bronzer, but this is pretty dang cool toned, almost leaning gray, which is part of the reason I like it, and I like the consistency. Let me just show you. So remember, I put a contour shade on this side and I had that patchy. Look at how that just kind of glides on. Now, part of it is the formula, but part of it is because I'm matching my skin tone to the products that I'm using. Yes, this one looks a tiny bit more shadowy, but it's so patchy, and when I look at it straight on, it looks a little bit crazy. Versus this one, when I look at it straight on, it still looks fine. When I look at it from here, it looks fine too. So I do maybe have an obsession with this one. It is one of my favorites. And like, this one is very much in the gray category, actually. It's gray brown, but it's a neutral leaning cool color, which is my sweet spot for a contour. Now, the last thing I want to mention is that I think that sometimes people get too caught up in like, oh, this is right, this is wrong, whatever. If it makes you feel beautiful, then do it. The way that you do your makeup is going to be unique to you, and it's going to be unique to your skin tone and your specific skin needs. And I think that it's ridiculous when people come in and they're like, that's not how you do it, that's wrong. Or when people do those videos that are like, this is what you're doing wrong with your makeup. I'm sorry, but if it's working for you, it's not wrong. There's no reason to go there. There's no reason to say that. Now, that being said, Hopefully this is helping you to understand color just that little bit better so that you can match your products a little bit better to your needs. And sometimes it is the easiest way when you like see the swatches all laid out. You can kind of clearly see which ones are warmer, which ones are cooler. Another thing that you'll start noticing, and you can very clearly see it in this swatch, is remember how I talked about warm colors versus cool colors, right? Warm colors tend to bring things forward. Cool colors tend to bring things back. Yellow, like I said, reflects the most light. Red adds the most depth. And then blue adds the most like deepness and darkness. All right, see if you could notice where I was going with this, right? These are our more yellow-based ones. And do you see how they look the brightest? I mean, some of these are slightly lighter, but actually this one and this one, if I were to change this to black and white, this one and this one are very close to each other. These ones have a little bit more red in them, actually. These ones have the most blue. So you can kind of see these ones are going to trap the light a lot more than these ones. These ones are going to reflect the most light. So hopefully that helps you the next time you go to pick out a bronzer color or a contour color. Maybe this can help you to train your eye and see, okay, this is actually what I'm needing for my bronzer, for my contour, because there's not a universal product for anybody, and anybody that says there is, I want to see what product they're talking about, because I don't believe it. It's just not a thing. Every product that I've tried that's ever been universal, it never actually is. So hopefully this helps. Bye.